Welcome to the Masterclass for Learning Game Development with Construct 3. I'm Tech by BoogeyBeats, your instructor, and this is the second part of Lesson 3. We previously set up our player using the animation editor. We learned about frames, polygon collision, creating animations, origin points, and how to set up the keyboard and mouse as game objects to later reference in our events. Now, we will dive into coding using the event sheet and set up the idle animations. For good naming practices, the name of your animations should be capitalized for the start of every word instead of underscores. However, you can use whatever name you like in this course. The player will be moved based on the buttons we press. The mouse input is just to show you how to do it. I won't be using it in my project. We are also going to learn how to create a behavior on the player so that the camera moves along with the player. My project was a little wild, so I deleted the extra player sprite. Before we start, I will go over some basic stuff. Remember that behaviors are just actions performed on certain conditions. We created behaviors in the first part of Lesson 3. Instance variables is information stored inside a game object. There are 3 kinds of instance variables you will use in Construct. You don't need to add them, I'm just explaining their uses. The 3 types of instance variables in Construct are Boolean, number, and string. A Boolean has 2 values, true or false. For example, if the player pressed the arrow keys on a keyboard, they are walking. The Boolean walking is set to true. A number is a number value, good for keeping track of things such as lives, health, and score counts. A string stores words or multiple characters. An example of a string is a person's name, address, etc. Containers are advanced and won't be talked about in this entry-level course. Containers are made from multiple objects. A car could be a container containing different parts of a vehicle. Just know they're here if you want to create them. Go to your player game object and add a new behavior. In the search field, type scroll to. Now the camera will follow your player around. Before we start coding, we're going to make a quick few animations for the player so we don't have to do it later. Double click your player game object. On the animation name, right click and rename it to idle right. Now duplicate it 3 more times and name those animations to idle left, idle up, and idle down. Based on the animation, edit accordingly. On idle right, just click mirror to flip it. On idle up, you can leave it how it is if you want. And idle down, remember to remove the face and mouth. Remember to press the left control on the keyboard to select your color picker. Whatever you click will copy the color to the color palette, and then just use the brush to draw over. We're ready to head to the event sheet. Now we're going to add our player movement via the event sheet. But before we do this, make sure your layout is connected to the event sheet you will be using. Click the layout and on event sheet properties drop down, choose the event sheet you created. Go to the event sheet and create a group by right clicking and selecting new group. Name this player movement. Groups organize events to make it easier to read. Also, if you group them, you can disable an entire group, which is really effective for debugging and such. Click Add Event, Mouse All Movement, which will be in your subfolder you created for the keyboard and mouse. This is your condition. On the action, select the player sprite game object and go to Set Angle. If you can't find this, search Set Angle. What you're going to want to type is angle, parentheses, player.x, player.y, mouse.x, mouse.y. And remember to close the parentheses. If your code doesn't work, remember the name of your game object we are referring to is the player sprite we created from earlier. So if the sprite game object type is name Henry, you would use henry.x and henry.y instead of player.x and player.y. The code you input is case sensitive, so pick a name that can easily be typed and remembered. Now we're going to set the arrow keys for the player's movement, which will change the animation based on whatever is pressed. When adding a new condition, you will see the keyboard appears as a condition we can add. If you never added it as a game object, it would never appear in the event sheet. So in the future, if you want to add a keyboard or mouse inside your code via the event sheet, remember to add it as a game object first. Use the key is down condition. Now we're going to use the up arrow. For the action, go to the player sprite game object and use the set animation. Now you will see quotes. If you use one quote, you will see a list of your game object's animations. Use idle up. Now select the entire condition and duplicate it 3 times, changing the keys to down, left, and right, and change the animation accordingly. Now your player should be moving, and his animation will be based on whatever key is being pressed. The next lesson, we will create health for the player and display the UI so we can see said health for the player. It's Tech by BoogeyBeats, your instructor. See you in the next lesson. Good job in completing this lesson, and good luck on your future project.